So we have a 2005 Chrysler Town and Country that we're going to do an alternator on. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dislocate the battery terminals. They're already dirty, as you can see. So I'm going to take off both the negative and the positive and clean them up and charge the battery. I'm going to jack up, use my jack here, and jack up the passenger side. And I'm going to take that wheel off, and that's going to gain me access into the bottom of the part where the alternator is. I start by removing the battery terminal posts. I'm going to clean them up and charge the battery while I'm working on the car. So I remove both the positive and negative, set things aside. Here I'm going to use a jack stand to make sure the car doesn't fall on me. Finish taking off the wheel and getting it out of the way so I can access the bottom of the engine and access all the pulleys, the belt tensioner, the bolts on the bottom of the alternator. There's the top of the alternator with the battery cable. That's the one that's shielded. That's the hot cable from the battery. Here's a look where you have a emissions crank emissions valve there that you're going to need to unbolt and get that out of the way. Here's the panel that's on the passenger side at the bottom. It has two plastic, mine had two plastic rivets holding it in place. You can see it's just hanging there swinging. And there's the access to all the bolts, or to the pulleys. Here we're going to take these two plastic rivets off, just pop them off. I was able to put them back on at the end. Just literally pull them apart. And here is the belt tensioner up in the top left corner. That is a 1/2 inch drive that you're going to want to use with a flex handle so that you can loosen the belt. It's a serpentine belt, which when you loosen it, it is very easy to simply slip off the alternator. Here's the view from underneath. Pulling on the belt tensioner, working to get the belt off the alternator at the top, and there it pops right off. So that was relatively easy. Here's the top left bolt on the alternator. It has 3 bolts holding it in place. This one you can use a ratchet on. It seems to work relatively well. The bottom one you can also use a ratchet or a ratchet box and wrench. Here's where we're taking the battery connections off and the electrical connections. Just use a screwdriver and pop that bottom plastic thing off. It's a little tough. Here's where I'm making a mistake, trying to use a socket on this bottom right nut. Do not do that, or bolt. Go out and buy a ratchet socket wrench, box end wrench. You're going to get about 2 clicks, and you'll see here, that is worth every penny you're paying for it. And you're going to get 2 clicks, unloosening that thing and tightening it. You will curse the name of the man that designed that with that very, very, very long bolt. There it is. Yes. So we've got all the bolts out. The alternator is loose. Now I need to remove that crank ventilation thing right there, whatever that is. It's 2 10mm bolts. Comes off very easily. Look out, there is a very thin metal gasket. Don't lose that. I started to, but used a magnet to retrieve it. Here where I'm simply taking off the 2 bolts and getting those things out. And then the alternator can come right out. It's very easy. You've got clearance. Sweet. Here we're dropping the new one back in. I know it sounds, you think 3 bolts, how tough can that be, and a couple of connections. Everything is so tight that it's hard to work. The nuts, the bolts move at about 2 clicks at a time. If you've got air, that's going to make it easier. That one bottom right hand bolt though is going to be a wrench deal. And I recommend a ratchet box wrench, 15mm. Go out and buy it today. This crank ventilation piece, put that in before you bolt in the alternator. I made the mistake of bolting in the alternator and then trying to bolt that thing in, and I couldn't access the bottom bolt. Put that darn piece in first and then go ahead and bolt up the alternator. There you go. You will be happy. It'll work really well.